Good evening. President Donald Trump ordered airstrikes on Christmas Day targeting what he called ISIS terrorist camps in northwest Nigeria, specifically in Sokoto State. And this military action has now sparked one of the most heated national debates about sovereignty and foreign military presence on Nigerian soil. Sheikh Gumi, the outspoken Islamic cleric from Kaduna, has responded with a strong call for the Nigerian government to immediately halt all military cooperation with the United States, warning that continued American involvement could turn Nigeria into what he describes as a theater of war. The United States Africa Command confirmed that American forces conducted precision strikes in Sokoto State on December 25th after coordination with Nigerian authorities. President Trump announced the operation on his Truth Social platform, claiming the strikes targeted ISIS militants who have been killing Christians in the region. The Pentagon released video footage showing Tomahawk missiles being fired from a Navy vessel, and initial assessments suggest multiple ISIS fighters were killed in the camps. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth praised the operation and warned that more strikes could follow, thanking the Nigerian government for its support and cooperation. Nigerian Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuga confirmed that President Bola Tinubu gave approval for the joint operation after discussions with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The Nigerian military's Director of Defense Information, Major General Samaila Uba, described the strikes as precision operations against identified foreign ISIS-linked elements operating in parts of northwest Nigeria, based on credible intelligence and careful operational planning. The government has emphasized that this was a counter-terrorism cooperation effort targeting terrorists, not any particular religious group. However, the strikes have raised serious questions and concerns among many Nigerians. Sokoto State is home to approximately 4 million people, the vast majority of whom are Muslim, and residents of the village where strikes occurred say they have never experienced any ISIS attack in their area. Witnesses described how the night sky glowed red and buildings shook from the explosions. One resident told international media that the heat became intense as the missiles approached, rooms began shaking and fire broke out. Another farmer said the attacks made the night appear almost like daytime. These accounts have fueled skepticism about whether the right targets were hit and whether civilians might have been affected. Sheikh Gumi wasted no time responding to the developments. In a detailed Facebook post on Friday, the cleric delivered a scathing critique of American military involvement in Nigeria. He argued that Nigeria made a fundamental mistake by allowing foreign powers to play any role in its counter-terrorism operations, stating that terrorists do not truly fight terrorists and that such interventions often result in civilian casualties and hidden political motives. Gumi's central warning is that no nation should allow its territory to become a theater of war, and he cautioned that U.S. involvement will attract real anti-U.S. forces into Nigeria, further destabilizing the country. The cleric raised particularly sharp concerns about the symbolism and timing of the strikes. He pointed out that the attacks occurred in Sokoto, where over 90% of the population is Muslim, and where there is no imminent danger of terror, while he argued the real threat is in Maiduguri in the northeast. The fact that these strikes happened on Christmas Eve, coupled with Trump's rhetoric about protecting Christians in Nigeria, sent what Gumi described as a troubling message. He suggested the attacks could be symbolic of what he called a neo-crusade against Islam, and he warned that U.S. involvement citing protection of Christians will ultimately polarize Nigeria along religious lines and infringe on the nation's sovereignty. If you are finding this coverage helpful and want to stay informed about critical developments affecting Nigeria, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss important stories like this. Gumi went further to propose alternatives to American military cooperation. He suggested that if Nigeria needs military assistance, countries like China, Turkey, and Pakistan could provide support more effectively without the geopolitical complications that come with U.S. involvement. The cleric also challenged the effectiveness of airstrikes as a counter-terrorism strategy, arguing that dropping a few bombs here and there cannot tackle the menace of terror. He insisted that effective counter-terrorism requires serious military presence on the ground, and Nigeria has enough personnel to handle this if the country gets serious about organizing and deploying them properly. Perhaps most controversially, Sheikh Gumi alleged that terrorism in Nigeria is manufactured and sustained by the same people claiming to fight it. He called on affected communities to document and share evidence of what is actually happening on the ground, suggesting that the official narrative about Christian genocide does not match reality in many parts of the country. The broader context of this controversy involves President Trump's months-long focus on violence against Christians in Nigeria. Since late October, Trump has repeatedly warned about what he calls an existential threat to Christianity in Nigeria and has threatened military intervention to protect Christian communities. In November, his administration designated Nigeria a country of particular concern under the U.S. International Religious Freedom Act, suggesting systematic violations of religious freedom. Trump has used strong language, previously threatening to enter Nigeria with guns blazing if the killing of Christians did not stop. However, security analysts have challenged Trump's characterization of the violence as primarily targeting Christians. While attacks on Christian communities do occur and have caused terrible suffering, the reality on the ground is far more complex. Armed conflict location and event data found that between January 2020 and September 2025, out of more than 20,000 civilians killed in attacks, 317 deaths were from attacks specifically targeting Christians, while 417 were from attacks targeting Muslims. The vast majority of civilian deaths were not categorized by religious affiliation, suggesting the violence affects all Nigerians regardless of faith. The violence in northwest Nigeria, where Sokoto State is located, is primarily driven by criminal bandit groups who terrorize rural communities. These bandits engage in kidnapping for ransom, cattle rustling, and other criminal activities. However, security analysts note that growing links between these criminal groups and Islam-affiliated jihadists have created what experts describe as a hybrid crime-terrorism threat. As this debate continues, Nigerians are grappling with difficult questions. Can Nigeria effectively combat terrorism without foreign military assistance? Does accepting American help compromise sovereignty or provide necessary capabilities? Are the strikes in Sokoto the beginning of deeper U.S. military involvement? How should Nigeria navigate relationships with multiple international partners? And crucially, how can the country address its security challenges in ways that unite rather than divide Nigerians along religious lines? What remains certain is that the Christmas Day airstrikes have opened a new chapter in discussions about Nigeria's security strategy and foreign policy orientation, and the choices made in the coming months could shape Nigeria's security landscape for years to come.